First of all, I want to say, man, I am honored for you to be here, Thaddeus. Thaddeus Campbell is in the house. Thaddeus, man, you're amazing. You ended up catching a flight this morning. Actually, you've been up since 12, catching a flight out here, doing a layover, coming here, and now we're together doing the podcast, talking about our market, our self-storage, our discipline that we are in, that we are navigating through. So I want to say thank you. And for everybody that's out there, Thaddeus and I met about a few years ago. He captured me because he did a podcast and he was doing this thing called 75 Hard, which some people have heard about in the fitness industry side of things. And man, he is just in his authentic self. And the best part, I was telling somebody the other day about him, it said, man, nobody can get on TV or on social media and out there on the platform and basically admit that a cookie got you after like 42 days or something like that of being into halfway through, and a cookie got you, bro.
Yeah, I just honesty, right? It's 100% accountability, and if you fuck up, and you tell the world, and I like to think we need a little more of that. I'm imperfect human. One of my favorite people is George St. Pierre. I was a martial arts teacher for many, many years. And those of you that know the UFC welterweight champion, longest running champion.
The guy was a stud back in his day. Still is a stud.
Still a stud. But his saying was, we're seeking perfection even though we know it's unattainable.
Yes.
And that's something that's always stuck with me. So, striving to be better than I am today, but still screw up. My daughter's birthday party, somebody had to bring crumble cookies in, and sometimes you make mistakes, but you admit it. And thank you so much for the kind words. Absolutely excited to be out here and have a conversation. I've had you on my podcast a couple times. Incredibly, by the way, Self-Storage Made Simple is the podcast, Safe Storage USA. Shout out to my partners and excited for that. But having you on the podcast, what I really am excited about today, and where I think that we're at, we're in a down economy. There's no denying, and unless you watch the presidential debate and listen to the Democratic candidate, that we're those of us that are in big business, that are in real estate development, we're in a contraction. There's no way to argue with that. But it's exciting because it's on the downslide. The people that really get wealthy, that's where they make their moves. So I'm excited to dig into this with you today. Obviously, we're in this asset class that's so unique, that's such a special place, and excited to have that conversation and especially relevant today for people who are looking to grow wealth. It is such a different thing in a down market than it is in an up market.
Absolutely. You couldn't have let a better segue into that whole thing, right? Isn't it Warren Buffett who said, it's not until the tide rolls out till you see who's swimming naked, right? So,
and there's some people swimming naked right now, no doubt about it.
Oh man, I see it too.
Yeah,
I see all asses and elbows.
We get these offering memorandums coming through our email every day from people who, in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, before the interest rate hike in early 2022, where they were underwriting to the best possible outcomes that could be, and got caught. And it's sad to see, but it also presents a massive opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to put myself out there a little bit. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've always had those that, I was raised with the right morals and characters, right? So to be able to sleep at night. So to watch a lot of these investors today who are putting money into these opportunities as they're pitched to be, right? A lot of times these guys who are doing this are doing it when they're throwing, a dart at a dartboard, really, and they're guessing that, this is going to happen or that's going to happen in 5-10 years. And a lot of times they don't pencil out, right? Just because they didn't do their homework or they don't have enough experience in that field to now all of a sudden, and they front load a lot of this stuff, right? So they're taking their money up front. Yeah. While the poor investor's got to sit there and wait on the back end, right? So those are things that, I wanted to just kind of throw out there. It's like, and shame on you guys who are doing that, because at the end of the day, I hope you pay those investors back and make sure that they're the first ones to be paid back, right? Before you take a single penny. And that's our mentality. That's the way we look at it. And it's got to be a win-win for everybody, right? Going in. I mean, you're talking about somebody's mom and dad, grandma, grandpa's retirement, whatever it may be at the end of the day. So these are things that are near and dear to my heart. The good news is self-storage has been such a resilient asset class for so long. Our family's been in it 45 years. So I don't think I've ever seen in 45 years like a true bank repo of a self-storage facility. There's
amazing?
Always some kind of a refinance or somebody's coming to bail out somehow, but there's not many around. We had that conversation at lunch today where you're thinking, no, it's coming, right, for the first time.
Yeah, and maybe not facilities that are built, because once you get it out of the ground, there tends to be enough revenue generated in these self-storage facilities because the cost of construction is so much lower, right? Like we're sitting in this beautiful condo, multifamily, this would be considered commercial real estate. You're building self-storage at half the cost.
That's right.
What many people don't understand, and for those of you that are investors, the craziest number to me is that a self-storage facility that costs 50 cents on the dollar to build is collecting almost the same exact money per square foot in rent in total to a multifamily facility. So do the math. If it costs twice as much to build, but it's generating the same gross income, which one's going to be more profitable?
Absolutely. And that income that you're collecting is not $2,000, $3,000 a month. You're collecting
hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions a year in some of these big, in your facilities where you build these Taj Mahals of self-storage, really beautiful facilities, 120,000, 140,000 square feet. You're talking $2 million plus of gross income a year that can be generated. It's a lot of money. Moral of the story is that if you can get it out of the ground and get the facility built, there's usually a path to being able to get through any turmoil that you might have. The issue that you're seeing right now in the market, and one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to you, is investors that came into self-storage in the late teens where they would identify a piece of ground, use metrics during COVID, and this industry went crazy during COVID, use metrics from the COVID era, expecting that to continue.
Crazy as in crazy good.
Crazy good in self-storage. People were consolidating in their house. They weren't working in the office anymore. They were cleaning out a room to have an office, cleaning out another room for their kids to do school.
No, I got one better. I've during that time, I went to a couple of our storage facilities and never said who I was, just walked through the buildings, and I watched people in their carts loading up toilet paper and paper towels into their storage unit that they're paying us, $350 a month for, right? On automatic payments, right? On credit cards.
Store toilet paper and paper towels. I
the
forgot
end of the world
that
was coming back then, right?
So the moral of the story is that we were seeing these metrics, these KPI, key performance indicators that we'd never seen before. And some quite frankly, some newer developers were buying parcels of land thinking that those trends were going to sustain.
Yes.
And they simply aren't. And so now you're seeing, and we see it all the time. I get 5 emails a day of raw land that's entitled, that's permitted to build self-storage, in some cases full permits, ready to dig, but the numbers don't work anymore.
That's right. And that falls on the side also of that's actually the strategy going into it, right? Because if you're not looking at this as a longer or long-term hold, right, then there's so much volatility in that period of time between 1 to 3 years. So when you go in, I know plenty of developers and guys all over the national market who have said, you know what, I can buy that for this, I could build it for this, I could flip out of it, and one of the REITs is going to buy it for, X amount of dollars. I'll make 2X on my money, 3X on my money, and the investors are going to be happy, and we're all going to be heroes at the end of the day. Man, look at what's going on now. Those REITs aren't buying like they are, right? They're usually at the end of the day, they are the lowest bidders for those Class A properties, right?
100%.
It's a private equity or someone who understands that market coming in, or a small guy who's coming in to take it. So, it's you got to have the right strategy going in, the right underwriting to it, the right capital expenditures that you got to have for it. You got to be able to have your interest carry, your operating costs, all that stuff needs to be incorporated into your underwriting. Otherwise, it's doomed for failure.
Right. I think that's one of the things that attracted me. So I came into this industry at the absolute worst time for a new person. August of 2021, literally the crest of the wave, right? So yep. I roll into this industry at literally the best time in its history. But I'm glad I did, because I got to see both sides of it. I'm very lucky that I've connected with some people like you that while that wave was cresting, still were like, hey, Thad, look, And I would go over deals with people, and I'd be looking at underwriting models, and I'd be talking to them, and they'd be like, well, look, you're underwriting to a 5 cap sale. That's great. And it may happen, you're underwriting to 6% construction loan. And yeah, today you can get 6% construction loan, but we could be another year and a half before we break ground and we sign a construction loan. Are you really going to still have 6%? And those people were prescient, you being one of them. Can think of a couple other people that I had those. I'd shout out to Jason Kanan with Nouveau Development, John Badura, who's actually out here in Arizona, who educated me and said, hey, listen, you can't underwrite to the best case scenario that's ever happened. You've got to underwrite to this idea that, we're going to regress to the mean, or in the case of today, we've got interest rates at a height you haven't seen in 30 years almost.
That's right. That's right.
How does Tony Ardizzone, your legacy built us, how do you account for that and still be able to find deals? That's a question I'd love to ask you is, how do you make sure you're underwriting conservatively? You're not, going out on a limb with a development, because listen, you eat by building, right? That's how you make your money. So you want to be building stuff, but how do you make sure that, and you're 24 years into this, that your next project's not going to be a loser? How do you make sure of that?
Right. Well, when my family got into this 45 years ago, so it was like shooting fish in a barrel, right? But it wasn't until 2001 when I got into it, and 24 years later now, man, I just follow that conservative principle. So how do I do it? Whatever today's market rate is, even at the discounted rates that we have today, July 2nd, 2024. I'm writing 10% behind that, right, of what the market is. And then my cap rates, right, and for most people out there know what capitalization rates and so forth are, that's what your exit plan is at the end of the day, and it really kind of gives you your multiple. For us, we're not just saying, okay, we can sell this at a 5 cap, right? So we've got 3 different models that we're looking at. We're looking at today's best case scenario, which is, a 5 cap on an institutional grade property, all the way to a 6.5 or 7 cap that we witnessed over 45 years. So that's where we look at it. And then we say to ourselves, you know what? Now let's look at the construction costs. Let's look at the land costs. Let's look at the entitlement costs. Let's look at the impact fees. There's all these things that go into it. And that's why you really, look, it's not brain surgery, but at the end of the day, you really got to know what you're doing, because these guys are going to get caught, and it's being prevalent and seen right now in the market. So for us, to answer your question, extremely conservatism on our side. We've walked away from a lot of deals over the years, and do I kick myself? Yes, but at the end of the day, I sleep well at night, and I'm not taking somebody else's money. We always put our own money into it, but whatever partnerships we bring to us, we want to mitigate whatever kind of liability or loss or potential loss that we could do. And like I said, there hasn't really been, storage has been so solid for so long. We make more money than the motion picture industry on an annual basis across the country.
I think this is crazy. I was talking to Alex Burnham, who is the VP of Acquisitions for Storage Mart. Storage Mart, the largest
I saw that podcast.
Privately held storage company in the world. They have $8 billion of assets, and mentioned to me, this was a year and a half ago, I believe it still holds, but 40 years, the highest performing asset class across all classes in the United States, not just real estate. It has had the highest returns. And the reason for that is not these 40% increases like we saw. I think 60% in 18 months during COVID was what the REITs saw in their stock valuation improvement. But that was a complete one-off. The real strength of storage is that there's never a down. They haven't had those negative growth years, right?
That's because storage does most of the time does better in a down economy than it does in an up economy.
COVID being a great example.
Great example. And on an up economy, when things are good, people are buying stuff, right? And they're storing stuff. So it works both ways, and that's what the beauty of this thing is, right? But really what we're talking about today is, where are we at? Like, you could see at the end of the day that, this market today, people aren't doing many deals because things are just not lining up. And with our company, we have an added advantage, right? Not only our experience, but we also are synergistically entitled, right? We have a construction company, we have a development company, I've got professionals that help with the entitlement, great staff that I've got on with me along the ride. So those are things that we have an advantage over anybody else coming into the market, even some of the big boys, right? They don't even do what we do. Not a proud moment for me, but really for my team and what we've done over the years. But let's just talk about today, man, because I feel like the guys who are right now scrambling, and not many guys are doing deals, and more deals are out there, and guys are willing to take a loss. I've just started seeing guys saying, "Hey, we paid $2 million for this deal, and it's eating us alive right now on the interest carry. We thought we'd have a loan in place by now. We want out. We'll take a $500,000 hit, right?" And even then, you're sitting there going, So
yeah, the numbers still sometimes don't work.
They don't work.
They're $2 million, $3 million into the project and want to sell you the land at $500,000, but. And we saw this, the REITs, you've mentioned the REITs, CubeSmart, Extra Space, Public, U-Haul, Life Storage just got bought out by Extra, but they've gotten very aggressive in lowering their prices to get people through the door. We know they're doing massive increases for existing customers, so we know what they're advertising as a rate is not indicative of what they're really making. But as a developer, that's the number we can take to the bank. And the problem is you've got these people that are offering you a deal at a steep discount, but with the numbers that the REITs are advertising in some of these markets, even a piece of dirt at $0, the project still doesn't pencil.
Yeah, it has a tough way of going. And that's a great point. It's like the rates today have dropped so much from the street rate to the web rate, and everybody's looking at the web rates today, and that's what they're basing it off of. We're at a point where those rates, if they come across the street, somebody comes across the street and drops their pricing like that, drops their drawers basically, you got to compete, and you're going to take half the pie away just by trying to compete with them. So for us, building a product that's in a niche product, that's something that's different, our products that we're building these days, where we can drive through, I could drive a Mayflower 55-foot truck through it, close the doors, be out of whether it's snow or rain or sunshine.
105 degree heat in Phoenix, Arizona.
109 actually today. So yeah, man, those are things that, and then, looking at the fact that we have a secret sauce. We got a secret sauce, kind of like an Italian sauce that we have made. We like to stir it up.
Ardizzone, baby. You got to have a secret sauce.
That's it. And that secret sauce that we have are certain demographic hurdles that we have to hit, certain population demographics we got to hit, certain per square foot capita we've got to hit at the end of the day. What does the unit mix really look like at the end of the day, depending on what the families look like, the size of the houses. There's so many algorithms and demographics that go into this thing. We really do a deep dive into all that before we go and spend, $15 million between land and hard costs and soft costs and everything else. I mean, it's a lot of money, but if you know what you're doing, right, at the end of the day, it's fun. It's fun, and it's even more fun when you're returning money back to mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or whatever it is, right? Or the investors that you got in this ride, because then they're like, when are we going to do another one, right? So there's guys like me out there across the country. I would say that they're far and few between. You probably count them on one hand, maybe two, at the end of the day that really have their arms around it. And that's outside the REITs. We're just talking, the private guys at the end of the day that we fall into, small business, right? That's
listen. There's only 800 to 1,000 of these built a year, right? So that there's not a massive number of self-storage facilities built every year, and there's not a ton of guys doing it at a high level, and a lot of guys like you are frequently building more than one at a time. So I wanted to dig into something you were talking about earlier. First of all, you're talking about cap rates, right? And just super quick, always like to explain simply your net operating income as a percentage of the years it's going to take to recoup, right? So if I'm paying a 5 cap, right, I'm paying for 20 years I divide the 100 by the cap rate, and that's how many years of net operating income I'm getting paid up front.
That's right.
So a 5 cap is a far cry from a 7 cap, right? A 7 cap, 14 years of net operating income versus a 5 cap, 20 years of, now I'm getting 6 extra years of money up front for my product. And you said it, you nailed it. It determines your exit. How much are you gonna gain on your exit? And this is where I wanted to go with you, because you have a track record from 2001. And just one of the reasons I told you guys, I have 2 partners in Safe Storage USA. I'm the business development manager there. And it's one of the reasons I get my partners on a call with you. And one of the very few people that we have you mentioned there's a handful of them.
Yeah.
And as much as I love you, you're not the only one I've introduced them to.
Right.
But I'm very specific about who I introduced them to, because I think now, especially in 2024, massive opportunity. We're on the downslope of the economy right now. We're seeing the constriction, but the downslope is when the millions are made. That's when people become very wealthy, is the intelligent moves on the downswing. You've had a 24-year track record where every single facility you've built has had a 2.5x or more on the equity put into it. Explain how you're able to pull off these kind of returns for investors in your deals.
Well, what's that old motto? It's better to be lucky than good. It's timing. It's timing. It's that exit timing at the end of the day, right? So you really have to be in tune with the market, what the feds are talking about, what you're starting to see out there with your GDP, what the analysis are, what you're hearing out there in Wall Street as well, right? I mean, those are all metrics that have to be looked at. But truly, we've been successful because of timing. And when timing wasn't there, the beauty of it, you're still cash flowing. So let's just wait another 2 years or 3 years for that matter, right? And then 3 years, you're a hero, right? Yeah. So you're hitting those 3X, 4X. So those are things that I would tell you why we've been so successful. Because we know, I always say, God forbid we ever had war on this ground and we ever had a situation where you just had to dispose of real estate right away. The property that's going to be on the hard corner that looks the prettiest and that's full is going to sell first before the off corner deal.
Yeah.
Or that's maybe 70 or 80% full. Is going to be sitting there. So I'm going to be the bride that somebody wants to marry, right? At the end of the day. So that's why we build what we do and how we do it and why we pick markets that are in major MSAs. We are looking at secondary markets as well. So those are, some interesting dynamics to go into. There's also some dynamics that we're looking at right now that I don't think many people are in right now, which is, taking some existing facilities in some major markets and, with our skill sets that we've acquired over the years of being able to, knock down buildings, cannibalize the NOI. When somebody builds what does that mean? It's like when you were getting $1, we're taking 50 cents off the table now for another year or two. But then when we bring it back on the market and we go back online, we'll make 4 times that amount. We'll make $4, right? Because we're adding more GLA, gross leasable area. So those are some dynamics. We're also in the, getting creative in financing too, right? Yeah. So guys that are in trouble right now, and they still see that there's an opportunity, right, in the project. They love the project. They know that they're vested in it. They've got their own money in it. We'll come in and do a sale leaseback type of situation with them too, right? So you can sell it to us. We'll be your bank at the end of the day. Yeah. You get the right to buy it at a certain period of time, right? After you pay us back our side of things. And so there's a lot of different ways that we're structuring today's market. But I truly believe this is something I've been waiting for personally for where we are today in our market. I've been waiting for this since 2001 when I got into this deal. Explain
why today is what you've been waiting for.
Because virtually lending has stopped. Right. And it's stopped from the bank side, or they've made it more difficult. I won't say they would stop. They've made it more
significantly more challenging to go get a bank construction loan.
They used to want your wife, kids, and house. Now they want your kids, right? At the end of the day. So the lending side's difficult. And then it everything flows downward, right? So it flows down to guys like me, where now you've got to sign off on the bank documents, and if things go wrong, it's called recourse, right? Yeah. I think you were telling me a story about somebody we won't name, but the guy had to sell his house, take his family and kids out of it to go and live in a half the size of another house and being a little bit more modest, because at the end of the day, he's got to put money into his deals, right? So those are things that. Is stopping a lot of development. It's stopping a lot of people moving forward. I think people are just pumped the brakes at this point waiting to see what happens with the elections. That's another part of it, right?
Big time.
Man, I hate to say this, but it's the truth. If the red side gets in, then we're going to have a chance, and red side being the Trump being elected, there's going to be a point where, things are going to start to stabilize a little bit more. It's going to be more business friendly, right?
Yeah.
But then I look at the other side too. If the blue team gets on, man, unfortunately, and I don't want to see this because I love this country. My family came to this country as immigrants, and I've told you stories about my father kissing the ground of how much he appreciates being in America. They became legal citizens through the process. Took them 16 years, but they did it. That blue team may decimate this country, but at the end of the day, I don't think America is ever going to be that country. And in that period of time, man, the opportunity will be so vast where billionaires will be made, not just millionaires, but billionaires will be made just because of what's going to happen to this economy and this market, right? So I'm excited for both, to be honest with you. I'm excited for both. I don't really care who gets in at this point. I mean,
do a little bit.
I know. I am
do.
too. I am too.
And
I'm
again,
a businessman, right?
I'll tell
I'm
you
a
why,
businessman.
right? The previous company I worked for, I watched 7 miles from our office, we built a 140,000 square foot facility. And I would go over there and there were 50 guys on site every day for 12 months. And skilled labor, unskilled labor, this is in New Jersey. So, the lowest paid guy on that job site's making $65,000, $70,000 a year. Mm-hmm. There's guys on that job site making 150 grand plus a year. It's 50 guys on that job site. And listen, this is not political, because there's been Democratic presidents where things went really well, and there's been Republican presidents where things didn't. But when you have a presidential candidate go up and say that we need to tax the wealthy more, the firm reality is that people that are building 15, 20, $50 million projects are employing massive numbers of people. When you're doing ground up development, you are employing massive soft costs for your project, right? You're doing a $15 million project. You're $500,000 to architects, to civil engineers, to people doing the geotech study and the phase 1 study. That's guys that are making $200,000 a year that continues to stimulate the economy, right?
Yes.
So am I a firm believer in trickle-down economics? I don't know. But what I know is that the more the economy is growing and the more we're building things, and of course there's always a point, but what blew me away is we went from 0% to 5.5%, like 4.5%, I don't know what the Fed is
overnight.
now. In 6 months. Mm-hmm. And you put a halt to these things. Now, the bright side of that for you and I is that as you slow down that construction, what happens? You create more opportunity, right?
Yes,
because on the flip side of that, on the other side of this, and this is why I love where we're at and why I flew out to Phoenix and why I really, quite frankly, I'm building a relationship with you. Why? Because in the next 3 or 4 years, there's going to be anywhere from a 20 to 40% reduction in the number of self-storage facilities that come online, I believe. I think from the metrics I'm seeing that from 2005 to 2000, or from 2025 to 2028, 2029, you're going to see a pretty significant reduction in new facilities. But demand is still going up. This is the number that drives me, and why I think for those of you out there that are potential investors and are wondering whether this is an asset class you want to get into, the big number for me are 2 numbers. Number one, in 2023, there were 1,000 facilities built. And the square foot per capita in our country, in other words, the available self-storage for every resident, went down 6.2 to 6.1, with 1,000 facilities coming on board. Population growth and deterioration of some older facilities. Some older facilities phased out of being counted. In other words, they became considered a lower class and weren't counted in what you would consider available square footage for a normal renter.
That's right.
So you had lower lower facilities, then you have Gen Z replacing baby boomers in the market. And Gen Z is using self-storage almost triple the rate of baby boomers. So as baby boomers continue to age out, Gen Z continues to age in, more demand, less facilities. Now, not only do you have less facilities, but you're going to see even fewer coming on board. What's going to happen for the people who have the skill set like yourself to be able to go and get these done in a really challenging market? It's capitalism, right?
Yep.
Less supply, more demand. There's only one outcome that comes out of that. I could be completely wrong. Maybe my crystal ball is broken.
No, I don't think so. I think you're right. I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on with what you're talking about. And like I said earlier in our conversation, is it all flows downward, right? So when you're talking about those, the soft costs, the architects, the engineers, all the people that you're employing along the way, it's a key metric to our economy, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's what we're kind of circling back to. Yes, I said that in a tongue-in-cheek. I said it more in a opportunistic side of way of looking at it. Of either way, there's going to be advantages. But truly, for the working class people, for the people that like my parents at the end of the day, who my mother being a seamstress, right? At the end of the day, I mean, those working class people, they need that job. They need that paycheck. They need to make that living. They need to pay their food for their food and their rent. And that's why you're starting to see Gen Z at the end of the day. They're coming into this market for what reason? Because a lot of times the Gen Z, they've just been working to a point where now with the rates the way they are, they don't have enough money to put down.
So they're living in mom's basement. They need a storage facility.
Or even like this place, we're sitting in this beautiful, towers that we're in right now with some great guys. And, we've got this phenomenal site, and I'm asking, wow, this is 550 square feet, 600 square feet. Like, where's the bedroom? How much do you pay for this? Like $3,500 a month. But yes, you are in Scottsdale, Arizona. Yes, you are in a beautiful, area. You've got the common areas and so forth. But this would buy a house.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? $3,500 a month should be able to be a mortgage for somebody. So it's also just quality of life and what you're looking at too. But unfortunately, there's that side of things where it all falls backwards onto our economy.
So I get angry. We had this conversation driving over here, and I'm going to take a hard right turn now. No pun intended.
You're allowed to.
7 of the 10 wealthiest counties in America by median income. 7 of the 10 are Los Alamos, New Mexico, the largest government laboratories in the country.
Right.
And
Military bases.
6 of them bordering Washington, D.C.
Beautiful Washington, D.C. That's right.
Now, this is not, by the way,
7 out of 10.
This is 7 out of 10. There's one in California. There's one in New York. No, one in New Jersey, I think, Hunterdon County. Like 7 out of 10 are government based. And listen, I'm not throwing stones at the Democrats or the Republicans here, because the reality is government has grown under both. So it's not like it's been one side or the other that's grown the government.
But how ironic, it's the wealthiest.
It's
in the country.
We're complaining about wealthy business owners, and yet it's the government that's really the one that's sucking the money out of the economy, in my humble opinion.
No, listen, I think let's call it like it is. It is what it is,
it's
right?
sad.
And it's what we were talking earlier also. I mean, we want to go down the path of wokeness, and how, at the end of the day, whether it's Disney or some of these other ones, at the end of the day, Bud Light, whatever it is, those stocks can fluctuate so quickly based on their ideology of who they are, right? So, all of this has a huge impact on what we do for a living.
It's
and
crazy,
for us,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's out of this world. But for us, being job creators, right, you have to look at it at a high level and then get granular with it as well. I mean, you can't just fly up in the skies. I mean, you got to, just like an airplane, man, you got to get in that cockpit and you got to make sure all the instrumentation is working, go through your checklist, and then take off, right? A lot of these guys in our market today, they just decide to go straight into the air and and figure out the instrumentation while they're in the air.
I don't know how to land yet, but I'm going to take off.
I'll have, Tower bring me down.
Yeah,
right?
if ever there was a time where it's important to partner with people that know what they're doing, that have a track record, that didn't just do it for a couple years and hit a couple times and but have a consistent track record through up and down markets. And as I told you, for me and my partners, it's our strategy right now. It's go partner with people that have a track record. We're fortunate. My partners, you talked about getting lucky and timing, and they readily admit they timed a couple of purchases really well. Their exits were fantastic. Not ground up development though. This was a time a few years ago where you could go buy a mom and pop self-storage facility. The big equity money wasn't as pervasive, so there was still some room for people that, wanted to come in and do a quick value add flip and did really well.
Yeah.
Those are getting challenging because people are buying at negative leverage. People are paying more or a lower cap rate, right, than what I could borrow from a bank. Right. So if I pay a 7 cap to buy something, but I got to go borrow money at an 8 cap, I'm losing money every year. Right. My cost of capital is more expensive. The cost of my bank loan is more expensive than what I'm generating in revenue on the facility. I can't do that. I'm going to go broke over time paying for the thing. There are some big equity groups, Wall Street money, hedge fund money that's coming in, and their cost of capital is lower because they're not going to the bank. Right. They're using investor money.
Right.
And this is a really interesting thing. And it's something I guess we could talk about. They're able to give a smaller return to they've got billions of dollars.
Well, they could do an offering like Extra Space did when they bought Life Storage. They needed $2.5 billion, something around that. But they just did a bond offering out there on Wall Street.
Right.
And they put it out to the market and they said, hey, give us your money and we'll give you a 3.5 or 4% return on your money. 4% on your money? At the end of the day, that's all they're giving away.
Inflation's 9. You're losing
and they just
money.
bought another REIT that way, right? So
insanity.
Kudos to them for pulling that off.
God bless.
Because there's a lot of work that goes into that. And I know the players that have done that. And it's a lot of work. But so's doing just a one-off deal. There's a lot of work involved, right? So
again, my message to people watching is there's something to be said for security, right? Of course, you want to... But look, if you're investing your money in something that is lower than the cost of inflation, there's a point where security is not really security, right? If I got $1 million and it's growing by 4%, but inflation's growing by whatever it is right now, certainly higher than 4 in the last couple of years, you're losing money over time, Whereas I look at Tony Ardizzone and your self-storage projects, you've averaged over a 20% rate of return for your investors over 24 years. Think about that. Somebody puts $100,000 into you, and 5 years later, they get more than $100,000 they get their principal back and more than $100,000 in return. They've more than doubled their money in 5 years. And you've done that over and over and over again, right? So listen.
Not to be arrogant, it's more than that, but yeah.
I was being conservative. You said the word being conservative and you're listen.
I get it. Yeah.
Like 30% IRRs, 40% IRRs.
Yeah.
We know, and I'm not a financial expert. I'm not a certified financial person, so I can't tell you financial advice. And we know that, listen, past performance doesn't guarantee future return ever.
That's right, ever.
However, I'm a history major, Tufts University, pretty decent school, and history tends to repeat itself, right? If there's a track record of 24 years of something happening over and over, and it's not like those 24 years were rainbows and butterflies.
No.
You're talking about you started in 2001. 9/11, for those of us that were here and adults and working, was a massive disruptor to the economy. We went to war in 2003. That was a disruptor. 2008 was obviously the 2008, which goes without
Housing
saying,
crisis,
right?
Yeah.
Massive disruption. And really, 2008 was the longest our country's ever taken to recover from a disruption. The Fed the government did so much to try and fix everything. And while it may have had some short-term benefit, you might argue, it took way longer to build out of it.
Almost
right?
2014,
It took
right?
6 years to really start seeing some economic growth again. So it's not like those 24 years have been the rosiest
Sunshine and
24
roses.
years where you've been operating at that.
That's
so
right.
I guess for me, And it goes back to what I said. For me and my partners, it's why we have conversations with people like you, because why would I go invest in a 4% or even right now you might get a 5% bond when I have this asset class that's still performing at this level and still showing these types of returns long term, and operators that have this track record that's just, for lack of a better word, I always laugh, right? The only thing in the last 40 years that's shown the rate of return that self-storage has is illegal. You have to be selling drugs or something worse, right? It has to be white powder or something you inject in your arm, or even worse.
Right, or even worse. Right?
Certainly nothing legal that's seen those kind of returns.
So let me tell you a story on why we've been successful, or why over 24 years, knock on wood or marble.
That's fitting that we're knocking on marble, talking about the rate of return on self-storage.
I had a very wealthy elderly man take me in when I was young, and showed me the commercial real estate world. It wasn't so much storage, it was just investing in general.
Yeah.
And he made it a point always to tell me how valuable other people's money was, right? So, but he had a theory, and I call it the FUF factor, F-U-F factor, right? You can imagine what the first F is for. And the other two is the F-U factor, right? And not to do that, not to have that. And part of that is that it's pretty simple. He used to say to me, look, Tony, you take $1 from somebody, right? And that person expects $1 back plus another $1. So he expects $2 back. That's what those expectations you have to hit.
Yeah.
Those are those thresholds, right? The 2X that everybody talks about.
Yeah.
You get your money back, you get another $1, right? But what happens if you find an oil well? Well, oil well would be the wrong one. That'd be great, actually. What happens if you find dead bodies, or it was a mortuary or something like that, and you've got to stop construction, you've got to get authorities involved. There's things that could happen.
Indigenous cemetery.
Yeah, there you go.
I've heard that story before. Where somebody had a piece of land.
I have too. Thank God it wasn't me.
Ritual cemetery there. Yeah.
So what happens if you got to do that? You're cutting into your profit margins, right? So at the end of the day, you go back to that investor and say, you know what, Mr. Investor, Mrs. Investor, here's your $1 back. I didn't lose your money, but I couldn't get you that other $1. I only got you a quarter back, right?
Yeah.
You still made 25% on your money.
Yeah.
Right? Are they going to be happy with me or not as happy? Right? And I guess it's all in the presentation at the end of the day. It's, look, this could have been really bad, but for us, that's how we attack our opportunities, right? If we know at the end of the day that we're doubling our money out of the gate, and we go through all of our metrics and we know exactly what we're doing, which we do, then yeah, I'm willing to take that risk. But if it doesn't hit that dollar for dollar standpoint, then I'll walk away from the deal.
And I think your track record speaks to that, because you can't go 24 years and not have a couple things come up that are massive challenges on development. It's just not possible, right? You can't swing 1,000. To use baseball reference, you're not going to hit every single one perfectly, and yet you've still, I think we talked about this a few weeks, but a couple months ago, I think your worst performing exit was a 2.5x for your investors.
Right.
Right. So literally $2.50 back for $1. And listen, it's not a year later. You're not doubling their money in a year. It's 3 to 5 years to return. But listen, if I could double my money every 5 years, there's nothing, I go back to what I said before, there's nothing legal that has a 40-year track record of doubling your money.
That's true. That's true. With mitigated risk.
Absolutely. Brick and mortar. Well, in this case, concrete and steel.
Yeah. Which today I was having that conversation with someone early this morning. It's like, help me to understand why the stock market's still doing what it's doing. Because we're in a horrible economy, but yet stocks are still, that the markets, I mean, to me, I don't understand it as much as I probably should. And I got a college degree. But to see the volatility up and down, and mostly up in a down economy, man, it's got to be manipulated somehow. And I don't know enough. I guess if we had a wealth manager in here or stock expert.
We know that, right? Like, we know that what happened to the stock market in 08. You saw a 50% reduction in the value of the stock market.
A little over 50, yeah.
Interestingly, in 2008, I just looked this up a few months ago for fun.
Is that what you do
storage,
for fun?
I do. This is what I do for fun. Public storage, Cube Smart, Extra Space, the big REITs at the time, 4% growth in their stock price in '08. Right. So while the general market saw over a 50% reduction,
I have slides.
Self-storage REITs,
Still
real estate
kept on
investment
climbing.
trusts, 4% increase in their value in the worst economy we've ever had, which is why I'm sitting here with you talking self-storage.
That's right. That's right. You know, the story on my end, on how I became, and that's the other part of our secret sauce, right? I didn't mention that earlier, is that I have with the C-suite administrators and the CEOs, CFOs, guys running the company at that REIT level that I've established partnerships with. Those are so important, and I've fostered those over the last 20 years, which has been really important for me, and it's been a good driver of our success because we get to understand also what they look for. Right? Because I look at them as an exit, and they've purchased, 30 properties from me over the years. Right. I don't look at them as their ultimate exit, but I know that they're gonna buy it because they like the MSA, the market I'm in. They like the quality of the product that I put out. They like where my site acquisitions are. Yeah. So all those things, and those are things that we do on our end too, right? So again, lowering costs, hitting hurdles, and those hurdles, in order for us to do a deal, is I get to go to the Cube Smarts and the Extra Spaces and to the Publics and go, hey, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Number 1, do you like this market? Yep. Number 2, do you like this area and the unit mix? Give me the unit mix. Tell me what works best here. Tell me what, the rates look like at the end of the day, right? You're starting to get that as well. Yep. And then number 3, would you buy this in 5 years or 3 years? Every single time that we put something in front of them, we're batting 1,000 on this. They'll say, can we buy it now? Yep. Right? Can we buy it now? No, you can't buy it now. You can buy it after it's full. Yeah. Right? I'll talk to you in 3 to 5 years.
This is not my best profitable time to sell to you.
Right. So
I was going to ask you that earlier because we talked about how there's some massive challenges right now. What's called ECRI, existing customer rent increases, is the big thing in the market. And what that's meant is the REITs are relying on really scary rates of increase of rates for new customers. Well, they'll bring someone in at a massively discounted rate, and someone might be paying 300% more in a matter of 18 months
Less than
on a facility, right? In a year, you might go from paying $80 to $240 in a very short period of time. The problem for us, as I said earlier, as developers, is we see the 80, and we've got to do our underwriting off the $80 cost we're seeing as what you would call their web rate. They might be saying, a street rate. It might say in-store 160, but we've kind of got to go off that $80 rate if we're going to be conservative. How important is it today to have that relationship at the top of the food chain with those REITs to be able to make a phone call and say, hey, tell me what's really going on in this market?
Oh man, it's night and day. It basically takes your risk factor down to 0, right? That's how important it is. In the old days, when I say the old days, back in 2012, 14, when we were playing in that market, the REITs were just now starting to get into third-party management. They had a theory as well as data points that they had across the country. Remember, they have 1,800 properties at the time. They got now almost double that now, but they've got these assets out there that they've been accumulating data on since 1989.
Yep.
Right? So you look at that and they start figuring out, you know what? We can start raising tenants' rates in the 3rd month by 3%, in the 7th month by another 3%, in the 13th month by another 3%. So there's different months that they looked across the country and said, you know what? These are the metrics that we only lose through attrition 2.5% across our complete margins across the country if we raise rates by that amount. So when you're looking at someone, again, those demographics, right? When you're raising somebody's rent by $6, $8 a month.
They're not even noticing it on
You
their
don't
bill.
notice it at the end of the day until it actually gets to a point where there's a threshold, right? And so
You go from 195 to 207.
now you start.
All of a sudden, you noticed it.
You notice it a little bit more. Again, it's demographics, right? Yeah. All of that starts to work into play.
Great point, right? Because if you're in Scottsdale, Arizona, and you go from 195 to 207, you may not notice it.
I'm not moving in 109-degree weather.
Definitely not.
You may. I may not.
In dry heat, maybe because it's
dry heat. Right. So's a microwave.
This is too funny.
Yeah, no.
But I it goes back to the earlier point, is that you just can't replace a track record, because there's a reason that the C-suite for the REITs returns a phone call to Tony Ardizzone that they don't return to Thaddeus Campbell, quite frankly. Right? I can't get that. I won't shortchange myself, because there's a couple guys that will return my phone call.
I get it.
The reality of the story is that it's much easier for you to obtain that data, the real numbers, the realized rates. What are you actually making in this facility? Not what the front-facing rate is to a new customer, but what are the people in your store paying? Because here's the reality. You talked about that. If I raise the rate 3% in month 3, 6% in month 9, all of a sudden I've raised the rate 10% in a year, and it only cost me 2.5% of my customers.
That's right.
I'm making 7.5% more money.
That's right.
That's a nice increase, right? So, but I have to know that as a developer, and your ability to obtain that information, for lack of a better word, it's why I got on a plane this morning at 6 a.m. East Coast time. I woke up at 3 a.m. East Coast time and spent an hour and a half eating an omelet in Houston, Texas at the airport.
And you got your 4 miles in.
I got 4 mile run in this morning. You do what you got to do, man.
That's huge. That's impressive.
3 a.m.
That's impressive. That's why you're impressive. That's why I'm happy to even partner up with you, man. I've been an honor being able to hang with you and talk a little bit. But hey, look, at the end of the day, we have worked our way into bringing our opportunity, our experience, partnering with people like yourself and your group, as well as friends and family along the way. We are raising a fund, and we're doing this fund this time to where we're bringing everybody else in, right? Because we're tired of making the big boys all the money, and I'm talking big boys as in the life insurance companies, as in the big real estate holding companies, the private equity company, the family offices. Not to say that they don't get their piece, and they do a good job. That's for guys that want to get to that scalability. I did that for 20 years because I wanted that scalability, and you know what? It's been a great leverage for me, because it's allowed me to, again, sell 30 properties plus to these REITs, and that's why they're taking my calls, right? Because they know what I'm giving them. I'm adding to their bottom,
and
I'm
it
adding
makes
to their
money
bottom
for them
line
on the back end.
Yeah, I'm adding to their bottom line. So that's kind of where that fund. Now it's time to bring it to the people around us, and know that I sleep well at night knowing that we're doing the right thing. Especially when we're choosing an opportunity and we're taking other people's money, right? So I don't try and maneuver the money or the metrics. I go off of what I know. I go off a conservative side of things. Like I said, I may lose out on some opportunities, but that's okay. We live in America. There's an opportunity on every street corner, right?
Maybe some deals that would have worked that you passed on. It's a famous poker saying, right? Better to fold a winner than to call a loser.
That's right. That's right.
You said something about, and I wanted to go down this rabbit hole with you. You've used equity, right? You used the for those of you that are hating to see the rich get richer, you help the rich get richer in those senses that the life insurance companies that have, and for people that don't know, life insurance companies have 30 times the amount of money that banks in the United States do. You may not know that, but so that for those of us that are in big commercial real estate, life insurance, and they don't write $1 million checks. They write $5 million checks, $10 million. They like writing big checks because they have massive amounts of money. What's the downside of using their money? Why make this transition to now where you're, and listen, we're not trying to say that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can get into this, because your fund is going to be, you still have to be an accredited investor. You still have to be somebody who has a pretty significant net worth or at least significant yearly earnings. But opening it up to people who might be more used to getting an 8 to 10% return, who are now going to be open to the 20, 25% return.
Right. No, great question. And we've got a slide out there that our marketing team has put together. I can tell you that using institutional big money, life insurance, that kind of money at the end of the day, we did a calculation that we've lost a little over, and I say lost, we've lost a little over $150 million over the years because we sold too soon.
Right.
Because someone says, it's better to make a profit. You can't go broke making a profit. Yeah. But truly, they're leaving all this money on the table with our asset class. And I know that, right? So the reason that we're getting away from it is because they have majority decisions. I get to make all the decisions on what color the doors are going to be, what the product's going to look like. Yeah. Well, somewhat simple. Yeah, the simpler, right? But when it comes to actually selling and so forth, and they get to call the shots, you have no control, right? So it's like, hey, wait, time out. Like, do not sell. Like, we're only at 40% occupancy. And man, I could tell you that one of our groups, Crow Holdings, Trammell Crow, right? That's another big family holding company.
Come up on a call I was on yesterday.
Yeah, and they're great. They're a great group. But the fact of the matter is that I get a call. It's like, hey, we're supposed to have a 7-year hold of this thing, right? We're supposed to cash flow this thing for 7 whole years. Our investors are going to be happy about it. Everybody's going to make money at this thing. And then we open the doors, and within 14 months, we're 40% occupied. And the call goes something like, hey, Tony, like, your property is the best asset that we have in our entire self-storage portfolio across the entire United States. We think we should sell. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? No, we are not selling. Like, no. We think we could get this for it. We've done our analysts have done this, that, and the other, and we think we could get this. I'm like, yeah, you know what? If you can get that, great. If you can't, then I want to be able to buy it at the rate that I believe I'm making my offer at to buy it from you guys.
Yeah.
They got the rate.
Yeah.
They got the price, right? So, but still.
But that doesn't
stop to what it is today. Because today, when I go and do an appraisal on that property we just sold, it's a 5x of where it is today, where we sold.
I go back to poker, right? Like, you have a hand where you win, but you didn't maximize the amount of winnings that you could have. Is that really a win, right? If you had pocket aces and you bet super big and you won a small pot, yes, you won. But
bingo.
Long term as a poker player, is that a way to make really good money?
You may not be at the winner's table at the end.
You're not gonna maximize your profit, right?
And that's where we've lost all of the majority of our income over the years of just straight up selling too early. So that's why we put this fund together, because you know what? This fund is going to be a 5 to 7 year hold. We're going to put this bucket of awesome properties together. And I mean, awesome. I mean, even we're going to take we'll buy existing properties, C-class properties. We'll develop into an A-. We'll develop ground up in an A market, make them A++ at the end of the day. So we're going to have one of the best buckets portfolios that will be out there in the market in 7 years, 5 to 7 years. And every investor is going to be paid back handsomely. It's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a fun ride, but I'm not putting myself, maybe it's because my risk tolerance and my age has put me at a point where I want to sleep at night, man. I don't want to worry too much. Right. And I don't want to be in a spot where, I worry enough the construction side of it, somebody falling off a ladder or off the top of a roof, right? I don't need to be worrying about somebody else's money at the day. That's the most secure part for me, is other people's money.
Interesting though, and I wanted to ask you and maybe kind of finish up this way. How nice is it for you to have reached this stage where your level of experience and your level of wisdom is such that you feel comfortable knowing that you're the right guy to make that decision on when to pull the trigger to maximize the value?
Yeah, no, listen, I'm honored that you would say that and that you would think that. And I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable. I'm just as comfortable as I am in this chair. That's how comfortable I am. And I think age has something to do with being creative in deal making, because that's also very important. Most people don't talk about most of these guys you see that are podcasters out there, and most of the guys that are putting stuff out there, paying for seminars and this, that, and the other, and come take my class. At the end of the day, it doesn't pan out. right? Doesn't pan out. But for us and what we're doing, it's just proven. It's a track record, and I'm very comfortable doing it.
I love it. Wish you nothing but success. As I said, for me and for my partners at Safe Storage USA, you're one of those handful of people that we go and have those conversations with. And so interesting, because it was literally on a call with my partners yesterday. I was supposed to be here flying out, but was on a call with one of the very few people that fits in your group of successful developers. Same exact story. They were having a conversation with us, and literally the same story. Love the equity groups, happy to use them, except there's times when you got to sell in 3 years because your equity group tells you where you wish you could have held on till 5. So wanted to throw that out there, that you are not the only person that recognizes that.
You mean I'm not special?
You're very special, because you're talking about you're talking about the Hall of Fame, right? You're talking about the Hall of Fame level of developers, the very, very few people at the top of the food chain that have a track record of massive success. And listen, thanks for allowing me the ability and my partners to communicate with you and hopefully be able to what I think is the greatest time. I honestly do. We're in a mature industry. You're not in an industry that's in its adolescence or its baby. You were in it in the age of, as you said, right, when in 45 years shooting fish in a barrel, it was the infant stage. It's mature enough that the track record is there. It's mature enough that you have the reach there to come in and give you information and be able to have data that you didn't have 40 years ago. But still so much opportunity. It is not so mature that the opportunity has been squeezed. So excited for what the next 5 to 10 years.
No, it's going to be a fun time. It's going to be some fun times along the way, and partnering with guys. I always say that if you can't have fun doing business, then don't do it at all, right? And you're always going to have challenges, whether it's on the real estate side or whether it's on the construction side. At the end of the day, or adding value to projects, right? The best part is, you got to be able to have that partner to be able to sit at a table, sit behind an office, and just go, hey, man, we got a problem. We found dead bodies on the property, right? So let's figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
It's interesting you say that. It's been a big shift for me in the last couple months is give me the problems, but surround me with the people and give me the strength and the wisdom to be able to come up with the solutions. And I think you said something wildly important, that a lot of that is who you're surrounded by.
Yeah.
How do you find those solutions? You have the right people around you, right? Which is why you have to be selective about who you do business with and who you invest in.
Yeah. No, listen, you're and going off of that, it coming full circle all the way back to why I said what I said at the beginning of this thing is why I appreciate you. I mean, you are authentic, you're transparent, you're disciplined. Obviously through everything that you're doing, through your journey and fitness and so forth, you're running a marathon here coming up, right? Those are all things that I want to be associated to, because those people who take care of themselves, those people who look after their families, those people that have a good lifestyle at the end of the day, they're not, being knuckleheads out there. Yep. Those are the people that you want to have in your world, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to grow together, right? You're going to grow together, and, all this other nonsense that's happening out there, let it happen. Right. But
isn't that interesting when you reach an age that we're at and we're pretty close, you start to understand that that's the real value, right?
Yeah.
You don't have, you start to just see that there's not time to be wasted. Go find those right people to be around. And certainly why we've hit it off so much, because everything you said about me is true about you as well. So
thank you.
Appreciate you, brother. And glad to be able to sit down.
Nice.
Love it.